Well, hey, Sun Valley. My name is James, and I'm so glad you're joining me for the devotional today. We're going to be reading one of my favorite scriptures from the book of Psalms here in just a minute. And this scripture, it's one of my favorites because it reminds me of step 4 in the 12 steps of recovery. And step 4 says, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And even if you're not familiar with the 12 steps, you probably at least heard of taking an inventory. It was probably a physical inventory. I used to work at a hardware store. Once a year, we would do like this huge physical inventory of everything, thousands of items. And we did this not to just torture everybody, because none of us liked it. None of us had fun. But the point was to get an accurate picture of what we had, what we'd lost, what we needed, and what we can expect moving forward. And that's why you do an inventory. But here's what I discovered. Those departments that didn't keep an ongoing regular inventory would always be in big trouble because they had no idea, right, what was going on in their area. And they didn't for multiple reasons. And like maybe they knew there were some issues, but they thought it was easier just to kind of pretend like everything was all good. Mostly because they were afraid. And maybe they were completely unaware because they were just plain lazy. But the bottom line, they were exposed and they suffered greatly because of it, because they didn't deal with reality. And that's the same for us. We need to take a regular inventory, but not of our material stuff. I'm talking about our spiritual stuff. Otherwise, we'll have some big problems. See, when we lose track of things, we begin to lose grip on reality. We begin to develop blind spots, and if left unchecked, we start hurting people and not even realizing it. In 1 Corinthians 10:12, it says, so if you think you're standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. And we fall when we forget. And remember, pride is about pretending. Humility is about reality. Ongoing inventory keeps us humble. It keeps our relationship with God and others in a good place. And remember, the Christian life is all about loving God and loving people. And this requires spending time with God. We can't do this on our own. But the good news is God doesn't want us to. He loves us. He wants us to seek Him. And when we do, He reveals some of these character defects to us, and we begin to align with His will. Our scripture for today is Psalm 139, 23 through 24. And I love the Living Bible translation. It says it like this. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test my thoughts. Point out anything you find in me that makes you sad, and lead me along the path of everlasting life. Here, David cries out to God, search me. It's such a vulnerable position, this posture of humility and surrender. His desires to be fully known. He understands that God knows him better than anyone. He desperately wants to align with His will. He also knows that if he does, it will lead to this everlasting life, a blessed life. And so the question for today is, do you believe that? Do you believe that God's will is what's best for you? And if you do, are you reserving a daily time with God to take a spiritual inventory and pray for His will to be done in your life? Remember, we can't do this without His help. We need His help to follow His will. And I can't help but wonder, what if we all prayed like David in Psalm 139? What if every day we spent time with God? We took this inventory. We allowed God to speak into our lives, any area that makes Him sad. A good way to do this is to journal, and here's why. We forget many things in our day, but when we write it, we remember it. We don't have to complicate this inventory thing. We can simply answer some questions each day, like, how did I love people today? How did I hurt people today? How did I add value to someone today? Who do I need to say sorry to? When we start doing this regularly, we can start to see some trends. We begin, with God's help, to work on these things. And I know this, when we're honest with God and ourselves, He is faithful. James 4:10 reminds us to humble ourselves before the Lord, and He will lift us up. Spend time in prayer now. If you've never journaled, give it a try. Read Psalm 139, 23 through 24. Write down anything that comes to mind. Let's practice this. In this way, we avoid blind spots in our lives.